Welcome to the Bad Boss Brief. I am Stephanie Peirolo.
And I'm Eugene S. Robinson.
And today we are on episode 42. And this one has a long title: The Draconian Boss versus the Consensus Boss.
Yeah. This is going to be great. You guys don't know, but this is going to be great. So anyway.
Yeah, having had more draconian bosses. So just to get us all on the same page, Draco was, according to Merriam-Webster, a 7th century BC Athenian legislator who created a written code of law. The law was supposed to clarify certain points, but actually what it did was came up with really crazy, extremely disproportionate punishments. Like you steal, you get killed. And so draconian has come to mean cruel and severe and generally disproportionate to the offense.
Though I love the Fred Armisen take where he's playing the Banana Republic kind of military guy. He's like, you burn the toast to jail. You know? Your radio's too loud, also to jail. So yeah, the draconian perfectly encapsulates that. And I've had both.
Yeah, and the reason that we came up with this idea was because of the news of Amazon, the CEO, Jassy, demanding that everyone at Amazon be at work 5 days a week in the office.
Yep.
Of course, we're not talking about the people who work in the warehouses, who have always been in the warehouses. We're talking about white collar workers. Yeah. And that's been all over LinkedIn, lots of thought pieces about it. So we didn't want to talk about that for the whole show. But what we wanted to talk about is more how you make decisions and how you communicate the path to that decision. And I like to think of things on a continuum. And so I think that looking at this decision-making process on a continuum, the draconian boss is at one end. They are they don't care about how their decisions impact others, right? And that might be the people that work for them. That might be the environment. That might be, like the other industry. They don't care, right? And their decisions can often seem cruel and disproportionate. At the way other end of that spectrum is what I call the consensus boss. So this is a model I have seen a number of times, not personally in my coaching business, but more from friends who work in nonprofits. And this is a way of decision making that prioritizes and privileges the well-being and desires and sentiments and express needs of the people that work there. And they're on opposite ends, but I think it's useful to look at both. Why are you laughing? Why?
Which in my head, when you finish that and you put the period on that sentence, the first thought in my head was, fuck that. And you can tell I've become management to a certain degree, but no, there are reasons I feel it, but let it go on.
And so an example of this, and again, this is the extreme end of the continuum. An example would be a nonprofit organization that serves clients in the community that is very focused on everyone being part of the decision-making process. So they make decisions by consensus. Everything is transparent. The lowest person on the corporate ladder, as it were, gets the same decision-making weight as somebody super high. Like on paper, you could see how that could be positive. In practice, what I have seen happen is that one or two individuals who don't have the interest or capacity to look at what's the larger good can really take an organization hostage. So let's use an example of a work group that really wants to go to 4 days a week. And they're talking with leadership about this, and they serve clients who have needs in the community 5 days a week. It's a Monday through Friday need. So management suggests, let's stagger if we can do 4-day work weeks, we'll just stagger it so we make sure somebody is always available. And these one or two people say, no. For cohesiveness, the entire team needs to be in the office the same 4 days. And so we as an organization can only offer services for those 4 days a week. And they obdurately acknowledge that their priority is only what they and their friends at work want. We all want the same days off. We all want to be in the office at the same time. We don't want to have to cover for other people. They have completely lost the plot, which is the people that they serve need services 5 days a week. Now, this is not something I'm making up out of the whole cloth. But I think that this is a useful example when the decision-making criteria is not clarified. Like, we want everyone to feel bought in is different than this person who's been here for 6 months gets to make a decision that is going to impact not just the organization, but the actual people that we serve and the reason that we're here.
It's interesting. I've had both bosses in the form of one boss. And in general, I talk a lot of shit about the former CEO of Ozzy, but he started out as a consensus boss, which had me saying very much like I said to your commentary, and I remember we were beta for like about a year, and he would, like, there was an office temp. He'd go around the room and ask the office temp, what he or she thought about some editorial piece that we were developing. He would, if there's somebody happened to deliver food that day, he would corral the food delivery guy and ask him. And in my head, I was dying. I was like, what the fuck were you asking them for? They don't know shit. And I go, that kind of attitude is what killed media. They have eyes, they read, they're consumers of editorial product every day of their lives. Their take is going to be as significant as your take, because if you were going to be successful, media wouldn't be in the position it was in now. So we got to listen to, like, the plebiscite. We got to listen to the people on this one. And so I thought, all right, maybe I get 5% or 10% input that improves the product. Is that worth it or not? Fundamentally, all I was spending was time. I had to come to the conclusion that it was worth it. Of course, later, when the company started to have financial problems, that was weaponized against us. And then he quickly became the other kind of boss. So it was actually interesting to have started as a consensus company for me to finally buy into it. And then it came up, we had a section called Good Shit, and we all hated the name. And he was encouraging consensus. And I remember in the meeting, probably after we had our first financial dip, we were talking about what we're going to change it to. And he flipped out and started screaming at us. He goes, I don't give a fuck what you guys think. I want you to, and it was focus on the job at hand, which is where I was always going in the first place. But he got me into this consensus thing. So it was a really interesting bait and switch as far as I could see. But the jury is out about what I think is more effective in terms of the general health of the product that you produce. But again, it depends on the product you produce. And generally, it's always better to have happy people doing your stuff than unhappy people. But I can be very happy with a rigid structure.
And I think there's two pieces. That one is, I think the best place to be on that continuum is in the middle. And I have seen a number of companies in the for-profit world that are saying, you know what, the pandemic changed how everybody works. Mm-hmm. So we need to be attuned to those changes, and we need to listen to the people that work for us, particularly people who are there doing smart things with a particular set of skills that are not easily replaceable, right? Mm-hmm. And we need to take their considerations into account. And I've seen companies do that very skillfully, walk that middle ground. And one of the key tools to do that is to say how you make decisions. And it's so simple, and so many leaders, they don't do it. So the example of saying, I am interested in what all the people who work for me have to say, send me emails, whatever the version of the suggestion box is. I value your input, but ultimately I am going to make decisions based on the objectives of the company, which is to increase revenue or value for our shareholders. Or our leadership team will take into account what you have to say, but ultimately we will make this decision in this way. Same thing with transparency, right? Like, there are certain things that we are going to talk about generally. There are other things that we are going to keep very close to the vest, whether it's an HR issue or a finance issue or a compliance issue. Setting expectations about how much everybody gets to know and how much everybody's vote counts can be really useful for clarifying, because people, when they have that experience that you described at Ozzy of, you think that there's one way of decision making, you think that you have a certain amount of power input, and then suddenly it flips and it's gone to the other sort of more draconian edge. That's the real crux. is
Mm.
being able to articulate, this is how we make decisions. This is how the people that work here are involved. And this is how much transparency people get about input into that decision-making process. And generally people can understand that and get on board.
Right, right. Well, I was laughing because I was thinking about the famous line, which I'm sure you will be able to comfortably recall. I'm the decider.
Right.
Which was from George W. Bush, which it could have been more artfully put, but we understood what he meant. So, yeah. I think clarity is super helpful. And in other words, and I mean that in a real structural way, when it was clear that we had lost the consensus boss and had moved to the Draconian boss, that was made clear by virtue of the fact of the screaming. I think they could have, which muddied the message. It could have been delivered earlier, more comfortably, and in a more balanced way, and it would not have muddied the message. But that's water under the bridge now. One
of the challenges with that more consensus-oriented way of making decisions is that people have narratives about what that means. Right. So even so, like in these nonprofit examples that I've seen in the community, what I've noticed is that there is a certain, like the leadership may think we want everyone's input, right? Because we want to hear from the people that are actually doing the work, the direct service work. But they don't articulate how much that's going to impact things. And so what happens is people have an expectation. This is consensus-based. My opinion is really important. I think we should do it this way. And if the decision is made to do it another way, they can really take that personally. Oh, so you don't want to use my previous example. You don't want us all to have the same 4-day work week? You don't care about our workload? I'm going to now have to fill in for these other people when we stagger our days off? Wait, I don't get to build my friendships? I have to do more? Can easily go to, you don't care about my mental health. You don't care about my mental health because I am insert thing here. You are going against our values. You are a horrible person. I mean, you look at how many, go ahead. What were you saying?
Also, you feel drawn out. Like, you asked for my opinion, I've given you my opinion, and now this is being weaponized against me. I mean, in ultimate unhealthy organization, that kind of paranoia is not super helpful, but that's exactly how people will feel.
Right. And it's when and we've talked about this before, this idea of like there's a lot of people in leadership at nonprofits are being summarily dismissed, not because they haven't done their job well, but because there's been this turn against them, this kind of cabal of like, she doesn't understand what it's really like for us. She's not really, just because the leader is making a decision about what's best for the organization and the organization's aims. So there is a real consequence to this of really turning people against you and kind of wrecking morale by not clarifying, are we consensus-based, and where does consensus draw a line? The same thing, people will sometimes feel very entitled to information. Where is so-and-so? Why isn't she here? How long is her leave? When there are like legal protections, like I can't say this person isn't here because she's in rehab and she's going to be back in 28 days. There may be legal things, but people feel like I should know, I should understand whether X, Y, or Z. So, you need to be mindful of that.
Yeah, it's funny. I had a gig at Mac Life magazine where they brought me in to start their adventure sports division, or to put a face to it and put it together and to move into mixed martial arts. But I said, look, you guys got to start paying me. They go, well, if we want you in the office. I go, great, okay. For what? Well, why don't you just be senior editor of Mac Life, and then you could develop this other stuff on the side. So 2 jobs. Yeah, but okay, fine. But at a certain point, because I had the latitude to do the MMA stuff, I was going to take some time out of the office. This is before COVID, before hybrid work and so on. And I think I delivered 4 or 5 cover stories while being not in the office. And of course, one of the people in the office started complaining bitterly about the fact that I wasn't in the office. Regardless of the fact that I was delivering on 4 or 5, she really wanted me to be in the office. And it caused so much sturm and drang that they had to say to me, look, you need to be in the office. So I'm delivering. They go, yeah, you need to be in the office. And this was 2007. And I just released, HarperCollins had just released the fight book that I had done. And and I knew I was going to go on book tour, and I could still deliver while I was on book tour. But I thought, listen, I'm not going to lie to you guys. I'm going to be on the road doing this book tour, delivering for you like I always have. But if this is screwing with office morale, then I should probably go. And they were like, yeah, you're right. And so, of course, immediately after, the editor in chief, was in the middle of trying to do a cover story. Sadly, I mean, it was a real serious issue. It had a seizure in the office, and it didn't work well. But the idea that somebody who was not an executive member of the staff, just with constant and continual complaining, got them to say, okay, I guess this is causing too much trouble, that we have to undo this. It was an interesting non-executive decision that was made, but it burbled up from lack of clarity around marching orders. So,
well, and that's a perfect segue into the other end of the spectrum, which is the Draconian boss, which came up with the Amazon decision. And for those of you that haven't heard this, I'm going to quote from an article on the Seattle Times, because obviously Amazon is here, by Lauren Rosenblatt. CEO Andy Jassy announced this week that starting January 2nd, everyone, and this is again the white collar workers, will have to be in the office 5 days a week. And he also said, oh, by the way, we have too many managers, so we're going to lay off a bunch of managers, which is another issue. Quote, in-person work fosters collaboration, innovation, and Amazon's sense of culture, Jassy said, unquote. Bullshit.
Also, isn't the catch here that he himself will not be in the office 5 days a week? Isn't that what
that's there's a new CEO of Starbucks who is going to be working remotely and flying back and forth from his house in California to Seattle on the corporate plane. So much for their sustainability goals. But I think the reason that this is draconian, right, is that he is not considering what is best for the company and what is best for the workers. Right? Yeah. I mean, Amazon is where it is because they have done a lot of really smart, innovative work. Most of their money now, from what I understand, the bulk of their profit comes from Amazon Web Services, AWS. Right? You think that people who are doing cloud computing, AI work can't get any kind of job anywhere they want to, especially if they get the most successful one in the world. So not great for their business objectives if their business objectives are shareholder profit. In February of 2023, he said, you have to go back to work 3 days a week in the office. There were walkouts, there were petitions, there was a huge organizing force of these white collar workers in Amazon saying, no, we are able to reach our goals. We are doing work effectively. There's a huge implications for us in terms of time with our family, costs, expenses, how much our cost of living is. We don't want to do this. And he now has run roughshod over that. And this idea that it's about culture, that's like, remember that old joke of like, the beatings will continue until morale improves?
Yeah. I mean, it's funny. A headhunter called me about a gig at Amazon, and I was sort of excited, mostly because of proximity. I'm sitting right now about 4 blocks from a major Amazon building, headquartered here in the Bay Area. And a friend of mine works at Amazon, had worked there for 5-6 years. And I was like, hey, what could you tell me? And the guy actually, this is a guy from jiu-jitsu, pulled me aside and said, whatever you do with your future, I don't know what your family, that you should not take this job. And I go, are you? He goes, do not take it. I go, so you're not enjoying being there? He goes, I am miserable. I'm doing everything in my power to get out. And he eventually get out. And he went to PayPal. He got out and went to PayPal. But he was like, and I was kind of trying to play it off. I thought he was joking. This was no smile, no laughter in his eyes, nothing. 100% deadly earnest. It's like I was going to San Quentin. He goes, you should not do this. So I told the headhunter, no, thanks. I'm okay. And it scared me. It's actually scared me. And to now, and this was over a year ago, so not even as part of Jassy's thing. So I guess they're making a tactical decision. Yeah, I mean, you do realize that Ozzy, even as a company was failing, and even during the whole COVID thing, it was in a Stalin-esque way, very necessary, I guess, for the executive staff there to act like everything was all right, like they had the upper hand by continuing to fire people. Even though we're aggressively understaffed, you couldn't have people leave because morale was crappy. You had to stay ahead of that curve and say, they're not leaving, they were fired. And it fooled no one. It fooled no one.
Well, and I think this is the part that really struck me is, there may be valid reasons for them to go back to the office.
Yeah.
The idea that in-person work fosters collaboration, innovation, and the sense of culture, are we suggesting that Amazon did absolutely no collaborating or innovating happen for 3 years? Is that what we're to believe? So from, I don't think that's true. They're doing quite well. They've done a lot of innovative products. They've done a lot of new things. So patently false. And then I think articulating something that makes sense to people, right? So if a leader was to say, we've been working completely remotely and our sales are down 30%. And we are going to come back into the office 3 days a week and give it 3 quarters and we're going to see what ends up happening, right? Like there's a reason, there's a metric. It's not just because a lot of the deal with Draco was that his solutions were disproportionate. His punishments were disproportionate. Saying to everybody they have to be back in the office 5 days a week is disproportionate. And I just want to, for those of you that don't live in the Seattle area, I just did a couple quick Google searches. The average house price, this is median, in Seattle is $833,412. Right? So that's a mortgage of $4,000 a month. That's a small house. If you have kids, you're looking at $5,000 or $6,000 a month. If you look at over in Bellevue across the water, the average rent is $3,280. Childcare for a young child, like an infant, $3,300 a month for one kid in Seattle. Yeah. So for people who have relocated, who might be living in a different area of the state, to have to be within commuting distance of the office, and commuting is not cheap either. That's a significant delta from where people have been. And what's going to end up happening is, and people have already started talking about this in press articles, is they're going to leave. Right? Yeah. And the other thing that is really frustrating, and this is part of the concern about Starbucks as well, is this doesn't apply to everybody. Right. Not every white collar worker has to come into the office. Right? Those people who are in very coveted positions, who are the AI experts, who are the cloud experts, they can work from wherever they want to. Right? And I think also what's interesting is that what is the problem they're trying to solve? All right. If they have to lay off 15% of their managers, if they have built up that many layers of bureaucracy, that is not a problem that is solved by people being back in the office.
Right.
Those two things are not related. That's just straight up bad management. So it's almost as if Jassy is saying, everybody has to do this thing. Oh yeah, and by the way, we're laying off a bunch of people because our entire management structure is flawed.
Yeah. Well, the good thing is, in a lot of these cases, that we've been able to see people get their comeuppance. And a lot of these cases, you have the young Turks that come in and they're going to upend everything, you're going to change everything. I've seen enough of those guys crash and burn where it actually gives me great faith in the system. The wonderkin who was brought in, usually in a media perspective, and the first time I started paying attention was Mark Golan, if you remember him, who was the editorial director for Details magazine. And I remember the scandal because they gave him, to lure him over, maybe he was at Esquire before, to lure him over to Details, $500,000 and a car. And for some reason, that guy, everybody, like all the ink-stained wretches in the trenches there, were just the car. That was like the straw that broke the camel's back. And of course, he failed miserably. And he didn't make Details a success. So it made no difference that he was there. So
one thing I will point out about Andy Jassy is he's a middle-aged white guy.
Oh, wow. That's a surprise.
And the idea is, I think what he and others are not understanding is work has changed. The way people work has changed. Their expectations about work has changed. And the people who understand that, who are like, hey, work when you need to, work where you want to, be productive, here are your goals, we're going to manage you in this way, they understand what it is that's happening. Of course, you know what I realized? I've never actually met Andy Jassy. Maybe he isn't a middle-aged white guy. I should probably check, but I don't know. I'm just going to make a guess that he actually is. Do you have a fire?
Have you not looked him up?
No, I haven't.
I think we have to. I think we have to do that now.
Okay,
I'll start the fire me.
You start the fire me, and I'll look up Andy Jassy image.
Okay. All right. So this is a weird fire me because
look, shock. Middle-aged white guy showing a middle-aged white guy on the screen.
And that was a good guess. You got a future in this, you know. No, so my fire me is an interesting one because I do a podcast. It started out as an MMA podcast called If the Shoes Fit, which has completely become now a PR. You take PR problems and solve them for people who are too cheap to hire real PR executives. And there's a section called Misty AF that I do, and it's Misty as fuck. And the idea being that self-awareness is usually a key indicator for how well you continue to do. So General George Custer, very low on the self-awareness scale, right? As evidenced by how he exited the planet. I'm going to go out and beat those Indians. And of course, he died with poop in his pants. So in this instance, each week I come up with a different character. And the character this week, I realized was bad, not only because he's fundamentally a horrible boss, but also because he's a horrible human being who is completely unself-aware of the totality of his effect on people around him. And this is Elon Musk. It doesn't sound revolutionary to crap on Musk until you start looking at what he's done and how badly he's done it. And now has exposed himself to real legal jeopardy over his associations with with dictators, as well as, threatening to murder or jokingly threatening to murder or advising murder against the presidential candidate, Kamala Harris. But I'm like looking at his businesses as part of this designation. And I don't think we could get half a dozen people off the street. And I don't think they could have done a worse job. 84%, I think, was the number that the host of the other show had trucked out in terms of the revenue lost at Twitter. Some people want to call it X, as well as an article I read in the Wall Street Journal 2 days ago about how Tesla has, in Europe, where they're not interested at all in those kind of monkey shines. It's just the public relations damage has been devastating. Tesla is now number 3, outpaced by, I think, BMW and Benz for electric vehicles at this point. So, and the claim I made on Misty AF was that that lack of self-awareness is like the guy who says, I'm going to invent some anti-bear cream. Really? Yeah, I put it on my body and watch this. And and the guy walks into a bear cave and does not emerge. I mean, he's got the fanboys, he's got the interest, but the people I know who work at the companies that he's involved with are absolutely miserable. And the only reason they stay, they're usually H-1B guys who need to stay because it's a heavy-duty immigration bite to go somewhere else and they're trapped. But this is not. So in other words, he's fighting a war on the outside. There's a burbling war on the inside, and none of it is around the successful conclusion of business. It is mind-boggling. It is mind-boggling. I mean, of course, if you're the richest man in the world, you can keep playing with monopoly money for as long as you have that money. But I'm aggressively predicting that this won't be the case. You can't make this many people unhappy and still trade it for what? For a few fanboys on Twitter.
It's interesting because you had referred to, I don't know if it was Musk or not, as a self-correcting problem.
Yes.
And a friend of mine was like, no, he's not. Right? Like this is not what if it's not a self-correcting problem? I mean, our system is set up to bring these men continued adulation and acclaim and power. Look at Donald Trump, right? Elon Musk talked about why isn't somebody trying to kill Kamala Harris the same week that he said to Taylor Swift, I will impregnate you and protect your cats. Right?
I mean, what he's doing is sending out an indication that he is unsuitable. And if you think that these oligarchs haven't gotten that message, in Russia, the oligarchs have gotten the message. If you are an oligarch, but without a military backing like Putin, you will be checked when you think you're. Carlos Slim had to buy Forbes so they would kill the world's richest person because he got tired of appearing on that list. This is savvy. I don't know what Jeff Bezos likes. Apparently, outside of hanging out with the Kardashians, I don't know what he likes or what he does. I don't know about his political affiliations. And if you think about it carefully, the last CEO that anybody paid attention to, in my mind, and it really was maybe, let's say, Lee Iacocca, who sought out the spotlight in order to save Chrysler. But other than that, these guys have correctly figured out, or Andy Grove, that it's not, maybe leave the headlines to other people. And if you look at the study that was done back in 2002 of the 100 biggest companies from 100 years before, how many of them had made it? There were like 2 or 3 that had made, like General Electric, and then everybody else on that list was gone. Right. So yeah, in the short term, Musk is going to make us miserable, but I don't think he's a long-term player by any stretch. You can't it's like sorry to make this, but it's like with Hitler. You can't have multi-front battles and win them all. It's not going to happen. Maybe stop short of attacking Russia.
No, so. and we'll see. And I think though that if anybody's listening to this and feeling smug because they, are so much better than Elon Musk, as most of us are, the idea of getting caught in a trap of a lack of self-awareness because you have not facilitated a culture where you get feedback and you listen to it, that you have
honest feedback.
You've surrounded yourself with yes people. That is something that I see a lot. And it's kind of frightening. And I think that people who are concerned about being good leaders and not falling into that blindness need to have specific mechanisms, whether it's, personal tracking of leadership qualities, how happy people are, whatever the business metrics are, or just people around you who can tell you the truth. That's the only way to avoid that self-awareness trap that people like Musk and apparently Trump and others fall into.
Yeah. And these guys have not had many successes and many. Trump's last success was 2016, really, right? So it's been a steady record of loss since then, and we're seeing the same worm turn with Musk. Part of it is me hoping that that's the case, but part of it is that I think that's really the case.
Okay. Well, let's hope. All right, that's all we've got time for today. If you have any comments or suggestions about the show, if there's something you want us to talk about, if you want advice, please email us at WTF@badbossbrief.com. I read everything that comes in and respond to it. So WTF@badbossbrief.com. And we will see you next time. Bye.
Adios.
Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Bad Boss Brief podcast with your hosts, Eugene S. Robinson and Stephanie Peirolo. You can check out more of their work by visiting consigliera.substack.com for Stephanie and eugenesrobinson.substack.com for Eugene. You can also find Eugene at Mr. Sleep 3, that's number 3, on Instagram. Reach out with your questions, concerns, work case situations, or suggestions to us at WTF@badbossbrief.com. We personally answer every submission. Be sure to join us at badbossbrief.substack.com every other Wednesday for episodes of Bad Boss Brief so you can gain further insights into your workplace environments. Until next time, don't be an asshole at work.